OffLecture. Learn beyond class.
Have you ever really stopped and looked at a plant and just wondered, how is it even alive? It just sits there. It doesn't have a mouth, it can't hunt, and it definitely doesn't run to the grocery store. And yet, our world is absolutely covered in them. So, yeah, let's dive into this mystery.
It all starts like this, right? A tiny little sprout pushing its way out of the dirt. It looks so simple, almost fragile, but what you're seeing is a tiny powerhouse already performing a miracle of survival. It's a secret feeding process that, believe it or not, powers almost all life on our planet.
And that really brings us to the main event. It sounds like such a simple question, but it's one of the most important questions in all of biology. If plants don't eat in any way we'd recognize, then how on earth do they get the energy to grow, to build themselves, and to keep our planet breathing?
To get to the bottom of this, we first have to cover the official story. This is the one most of us learned back in school. It's the story of the vast majority of plants, the ones we call the self-feeders.
The fancy scientific term for this is autotroph. It's straight from Greek, auto, which means self, and trophos, which means nourishment, so a self-nourisher. These are the organisms that don't need to go find food because, get this, they literally make it themselves from the simplest things around them.
So what's the recipe for this amazing meal? It's a little process called photosynthesis. Think of it like cooking. The plant takes sunlight for its energy, kind of like the heat from the stove. It soaks up water from the soil through its roots, and it breathes in carbon dioxide from the air. The secret ingredient that makes it all work? Chlorophyll. That's the green pigment that actually grabs the sunlight. The plant then uses that energy to whip all these simple ingredients into sugars, and that's its food. That's what it needs to grow.
And for almost the entire plant kingdom, this is the rule. It's a brilliant, incredibly successful strategy. It's what has allowed green plants to take over pretty much every corner of the planet. But, nature loves to experiment. And this is where our investigation starts to get really interesting.
Because in nature, for just about every rule, you can almost always find an exception. So what about the plants that can't, or maybe just don't, want to follow this recipe? What happens when a plant decides to break the rules?
Well, welcome to the case files of the rule breakers. We're about to meet a really fascinating group of plants that have come up with totally different and sometimes, honestly, shocking ways to get their food.
This brings us to the total opposite idea. If an autotroph is a self-feeder, well, these rule breakers are what we call heterotrophs. Again, from the Greek heteros, meaning others. These guys get their food from, well, others. And yes, that includes some very, very strange plants. Let's pop open our first case file, the Thieves. Yep, these are plants that have basically decided that making their own food is just way too much work. It's a whole lot easier to just steal it. Say hello to Cuscuta, also known as dodder. Just look at it. It's not green at all. It's this weird yellow, stringy plant that has zero chlorophyll. It literally cannot perform photosynthesis. So instead, it wraps itself all around a green, unsuspecting plant and uses these special roots to tap right into the host and just suck out all the good stuff it needs. This behavior makes Cuscuta a textbook example of a parasite. It lives off another living thing, the host, and it takes ready-made food without giving a single thing back. It's a professional food thief.
All right, moving on from thievery to something even more dramatic. Let's get into case file number 2, the hunters. And yes, you heard that right. We're talking about plants that kill for a living.
And here are two of the most famous ones, the Venus flytrap and the pitcher plant. Now, something you'll notice right away is that both of these are green. So that means they can still do photosynthesis like other plants. But they've evolved this dramatic side hustle to get some extra crucial nutrients.
So why do they do it? Why hunt? Well, the clue is in the soil. These plants often live in places like bogs and swamps where the soil is really poor in nutrients, especially nitrogen. So to get that extra nutrition, they've figured out how to catch a meal on the fly, literally, trapping insects to get that all-important nitrogen boost. And their strategy is just brilliant. First, they attract their prey using bright colors and sweet nectar. Then comes the trap. The Venus flytrap snaps shut in a blink of an eye, while the pitcher plant has this super slippery rim that causes insects to just fall right in. And finally, they release digestive juices to break down the insect and soak up all those valuable nutrients.
Okay, our next group of rule breakers isn't nearly as aggressive. Instead of stealing or hunting, they have a completely different job. We're going to call them the recyclers. They feed on things that are already dead.
I guarantee you've seen this before. You know that fuzzy mold on an old piece of bread? Well, that's a type of fungus, and it's the perfect example of this feeding strategy. These kinds of organisms, like fungi and some bacteria, absolutely thrive on dead and decaying stuff.
The scientific name for this is saprotroph. These are basically nature's cleanup crew. They release digestive juices onto dead material, breaking it all down on the outside, and then they just absorb the simple nutrients. It's a vital role for recycling nutrients back into the ecosystem.
Okay, for our last case file, we're shifting gears completely. We're moving away from theft, hunting, and recycling to something totally different: cooperation. Let's meet the partners.
This whole idea is called a symbiotic relationship. It's when two completely different organisms live together really closely and both of them actually benefit from the deal. It's a total win-win situation.
And here are two fantastic examples. First, on the left, you see lichen on a tree branch. Now that's not one organism. It's actually a team-up between a fungus and an alga. The fungus gives it shelter and water, and the alga, which can do photosynthesis, provides the food. Then on the right, you've got a diagram of the roots of a pea plant. Inside those little bumps live Rhizobium bacteria. These bacteria grab nitrogen from the air, which plants can't do, and turn it into plant food. And in return, the plant gives the bacteria a safe place to live and some food. A perfect partnership.
So after opening all these case files, what have we actually learned? From the thieves and hunters to the recyclers and partners, the big reveal is that the plant world is just a masterclass in survival. Plants have evolved this incredible diversity of strategies to find food and thrive in just about every environment you can imagine.
Which brings us right back to where we started. That simple little sprout? Well, it turns out it isn't so simple after all. The plant world is this complex, dynamic, and yeah, sometimes ruthless place, just full of ingenious survivors. So the next time you see a plant, maybe you'll ask yourself, what's your secret? How are you really eating?